At Mrs. Victoria Bennet's birthday dinner in Paris, my seat was missing. Mr. Bennet chuckled. "Oh, Sarah, we must have miscounted the chairs," as the family laughed. I calmly said, "I understand. I'm staff, not family," and walked out. 30 minutes later, they discovered I'd canceled the entire celebration. Venue, catering, transportation, everything. Their faces turned ghostly white. "I understand. I'm staff, not family," I said, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. The words hung in the air of that exclusive Parisian restaurant as 14 pairs of eyes stared back at me with expressions ranging from shock to poorly concealed satisfaction. Mr. Bennet's light chuckle as he'd said, "We must have," miscounted, still echoed in my ears as I turned and walked away from the table where there was no chair for me. The humiliation burned through my veins as I exited the restaurant, but not a single tear fell. Instead, I felt an eerie calm take over as I pulled out my phone and opened my professional contacts list. I had 30 minutes before they'd realize what I was doing, and that was more than enough time. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to thank each of you for being part of this incredible journey. Sometimes the most powerful moments come when we finally recognize our worth. If you've ever felt invisible in someone else's world, this story might resonate with you. Before we witness Sarah's journey from London's most respected private nanny to a woman reclaiming her dignity in Paris, hit subscribe to join our community who appreciate stories of self-discovery and unexpected strength. Now let's step behind the curtain of a position built on invisible labor. My name is Sarah Mitchell. 4 years ago, I was a certified Norland nanny, one of the most prestigious childcare qualifications in the world. I'd trained for 2 years at Norland College, learning everything from pediatric first aid to defensive driving, from early childhood education to diplomatic protocol. My references were impeccable. I'd worked for ambassadors, tech billionaires, and even minor European royalty. My specialty was high-need children, those with anxiety, learning differences, or behavioral challenges. I had a gift for connecting with kids that others found difficult, and families paid premium rates for my expertise. That's how I met the Bennet family. Victoria Bennet was the wife of Marcus Bennet, founder of Bennet Capital Group, one of London's most successful private equity firms. They had 2 children, Olivia, age 7, who had severe anxiety and sensory processing issues, and little James, age 4, who was on the autism spectrum and required structured routines and specialized care. The previous 3 nannies had lasted less than 2 months each. The family was desperate when my agency recommended me. My interview took place at their Kensington townhouse, a 5-story Georgian masterpiece worth upwards of £20 million. Victoria met me in her drawing room, dressed in Chanel and dripping with understated diamonds. She was beautiful in that particular way of wealthy women who have endless time and money for self-care. Perfect skin, highlighted hair, personal trainer body, but her eyes were tired and stressed. "Sarah, I'll be direct," she said after the briefest of pleasantries. "My children are challenging. Olivia has panic attacks over things like clothing tags and loud noises. James needs his routine followed precisely, or he has complete meltdowns. My husband works constantly. I have social obligations. I need someone who can handle everything." I listened carefully, taking notes. "Tell me about their current routines, their triggers. What calms them when they're dysregulated?" For the next hour, Victoria talked. I asked specific questions about sensory preferences, communication styles, what the children enjoyed. By the end, I had a clear picture. These weren't difficult children. They were neurodivergent children whose needs weren't being understood or met properly. "I can help them," I said confidently, "but I need complete authority over their care routines. No contradicting my strategies, no last-minute schedule changes without consultation, and I need the family to commit to consistency." Victoria practically sagged with relief. "Whatever you need. When can you start?" The first 3 months were magical. I established routines that worked for James's need for predictability. I found clothing without tags for Olivia, and created a calm-down corner in her room for when she felt overwhelmed. I learned their languages. James communicated better through pictures. Olivia needed warning before transitions. Slowly, the panic attacks decreased. James's meltdowns became rare. The children bloomed, but I also saw things. I saw Victoria cancel plans with the children repeatedly for lunch dates and spa appointments. I saw Marcus arrive home after the kids were asleep most nights. I saw both parents hand their children tablets instead of engaging with them. I became their primary attachment figure by default. And while I loved Olivia and James fiercely, it broke my heart that their parents were so absent. Still, the Bennets treated me well at first. They paid on time, gave me a comfortable room in the staff quarters on the top floor, respected my time off. Victoria even occasionally asked my opinion on parenting strategies. I was, in their words, part of the family. The cracks began showing around month 6. Victoria started expecting me to work through my scheduled days off without additional pay. "It's just this once, Sarah. We have an important dinner." Then it was Marcus calling me at midnight when traveling. "James is crying for you. Can you FaceTime him?" My boundaries eroded slowly. So gradually, I barely noticed. By year 1, I was working 70-hour weeks, but only paid for 40. When I raised this with Victoria, she looked surprised. "But Sarah, we give you room and board. That's worth quite a lot. And you love the children, don't you? This isn't really work for you." I bit my tongue and stayed because of Olivia and James. They needed consistency, and I'd become their safe person. Olivia's anxiety was manageable now. James had made incredible developmental progress. Leaving felt like abandoning them. The Bennett's social circle began using me, too. At dinner parties, I'd serve canapes, then manage all the children when guests brought them. At weekend country house visits, I was expected to handle not just Olivia and James, but whoever else's children were present. Never mind that these weren't my responsibilities or my charges. "Sarah's amazing with children," Victoria would say, as if I were a parlor trick to show off rather than a professional with boundaries. The really insidious part was how they'd swing between treating me as staff and treating me as family, whichever suited them at the moment. When they needed me to work extra hours without complaint, I was like family, practically an aunt to the children. When I asked for my contracted time off or proper overtime pay, suddenly I was just the nanny who should remember my place. Year 2 brought more warning signs I should have heeded. The Bennett's spending seemed increasingly reckless. Designer shopping sprees, a new Range Rover every year, Victoria's jewelry collection that could fund a small country. Meanwhile, my paycheck started arriving late. First by a few days, then a week, then 2 weeks. "Cash flow issue with the business," Marcus would say dismissively. "You'll get it, plus a bonus for your patience." The bonus never materialized. Neither did the raise I'd been promised at my 1-year review. When I pressed the issue, Victoria's warmth cooled noticeably. "Sarah, we've been extraordinarily generous with you. Perhaps you don't appreciate how good you have it here." I started documenting everything. Every late payment. Every hour worked beyond my contract. Every text message asking me to work on my day off. Every complaint about my attitude when I enforced boundaries. Professional nannies know. Always protect yourself with documentation. By year 3, I was exhausted but trapped. Olivia and James had made such progress. Olivia was thriving at school. James was communicating clearly now. How could I leave them? But the Bennetts had become increasingly demanding and increasingly late with payments. I'd had to dip into my own savings twice to cover expenses they should have reimbursed. Then came the Paris trip announcement. Victoria's 50th birthday celebration. A week in Paris for the whole family. The children were excited. "Sarah's coming too," Olivia had said immediately. "She has to come. I can't sleep without her there." Victoria had smiled indulgently. "Of course Sarah's coming. We couldn't possibly manage without her." I should have asked more questions. I should have gotten everything in writing. But I wanted to believe I was valued, that after 3 years of loving their children like my own, I was actually appreciated. The planning began months in advance. Victoria handed me a list of requirements. Research child-friendly restaurants. Find activities suitable for James's needs. Pack the children's belongings. Arrange their travel documents. Communicate with the hotel about room requirements. I did it all, on top of my regular 60-hour weeks with the children. 2 weeks before departure, I discovered my plane ticket was business class while the family flew first class. Small thing, I told myself. At least I'm included. Then I saw the hotel reservations. The Bennetts had booked a family suite at the Plaza Athénée, one of Paris's most luxurious hotels. I was in a staff room on a different floor, far from the children. "Olivia has nightmares," I mentioned to Victoria. "She needs me close by at night." "Sarah, you're not their mother. They'll be fine. You need to stop being so attached. It's not healthy." This from the woman who'd explicitly hired me because I could bond with her challenging children. This from the woman who regularly left her kids with me for days while she jetted off to spa retreats. The week before the trip, I accidentally overheard a phone conversation Victoria was having with her sister. I'd brought the children back from the park earlier than expected and was in the kitchen getting them snacks, when her voice carried from the adjoining morning room. "Of course, Sarah's not invited to the birthday dinner. She's the nanny. Can you imagine? No, she'll stay with the children at the hotel while we go out. She's being paid to work, not to socialize with us." My hands froze on the refrigerator door. The children, absorbed in washing their hands at the sink, didn't notice my sudden stillness. "I know she's been acting entitled lately," Victoria continued, asking about overtime pay and time off. "Marcus thinks we should replace her after we get back from Paris. But honestly, finding someone who can handle both kids is impossible. We'll keep her for now, but really firm up the boundaries. She needs to remember she's staff. That night, after the children were asleep, I made copies of everything. Every contract violation, every text message, every late payment, every email showing I'd raised concerns that were dismissed. I forwarded them to my personal email and printed hard copies. I also did something I'd never done before. I opened my laptop and began researching the Bennett's financial situation. What I found chilled me. Lawsuits from investors, allegations of financial mismanagement, rumors of the company being on the verge of collapse. Marcus Bennett's golden reputation was apparently built on increasingly shaky ground. The lavish lifestyle was a facade, maintained by leveraging everything they owned. More disturbing, I found a draft of a reference letter Victoria had prepared for me. It was dated 2 months in the future, after the Paris trip. The letter was lukewarm at best, damning me with faint praise and subtle suggestions. That I had boundary issues with the children and difficulty accepting direction from parents. It was clearly designed to make it harder for me to find another position while giving her plausible deniability. They were planning to fire me after squeezing every bit of use out of me for this Paris trip. After 3 years of pouring my heart into their children, after sacrificing my own life and boundaries, after tolerating late payments and overwork, they were going to discard me with a reference that could damage my career. I sat in my small staff room at the top of the townhouse, looking at the evidence on my laptop screen, and something inside me shifted. I'd spent 3 years being understanding, being flexible, putting the children's needs above my own well-being. But the Bennetts had never valued any of it. I was just convenient labor to them, easily replaceable once they'd used me up. The morning of our flight to Paris, I packed my bags with meticulous care, professional attire, documentation of everything stored on a USB drive in my handbag, and a calm determination I'd never felt before. I helped Olivia and James pack their things, making sure they had their comfort items, their sensory-friendly clothing, their routine charts. Whatever happened, I wouldn't let the children suffer for their parents' sins. The flight was my first taste of what was coming. The Bennetts swept through first-class priority boarding while I waited in the business-class queue with the masses. On board, they didn't check on the children once, confident I had everything handled. I did, of course. I kept James calm during takeoff, helped Olivia with her ears during the descent, managed snacks and entertainment. I was exceptional at my job, even when my heart was breaking. We arrived at the Plaza Athénée in the late afternoon. The hotel was magnificent. Glittering chandeliers, marble floors, impeccable service. The Bennetts were greeted like visiting royalty and shown to their sprawling suite overlooking Avenue Montaigne. I followed behind with the children, luggage and carry-on bags no one else wanted to handle. My room was indeed on a different floor, small, basic, with a view of an air shaft. The distance from the children's room was considerable. That first night proved my concerns valid. Olivia woke at 2 in the morning with a nightmare, and by the time the night clerk reached me and I got to their suite, she'd worked herself into a full panic attack. Victoria, woken by the commotion, snapped at me for not preventing it somehow. The next few days followed a pattern. I'd have the children ready for family activities, but the Bennetts would often change plans last minute or extend outings without telling me, leaving me sitting in parks or cafes with 2 increasingly tired children. I'd get them back to the hotel, manage dinner, bath time, bedtime routines, then collapse in my small room, only to do it all again the next day. The other families the Bennetts socialized with had nannies too, and we'd find ourselves pushed together while our employers dined or shopped. That's how I met Catherine, a French nanny working for an American family. "They always do this," she said wearily as we watched 6 children in the Tuileries garden while our respective employers had a 3-hour lunch. "We're invisible until they need us. Then we're expected to be grateful for the privilege of serving them." Her words resonated. I'd been so focused on the children, on being excellent at my job, that I'd let the Bennetts treat me as less than human. No more. The birthday dinner was planned for Victoria's actual birthday, 3 days into our trip. It was to be held at Le Jules Verne, the Michelin-starred restaurant in the Eiffel Tower. I'd made the reservation months ago, providing my credit card to hold the booking for their party of 14, the Bennetts, their extended family who'd flown in for the celebration, and close friends. It was an incredibly difficult reservation to secure, requiring connections and persistence. The morning of the dinner, Victoria handed me an itinerary. The family would spend the day shopping and at the spa. I was to keep the children entertained, have them bathed and dressed by 6, and then, "You'll order room service with them while we're at dinner. I've arranged for the concierge to check on you every hour." "I'm not invited to the dinner," I said. It wasn't a question. "Sarah, it's an adult celebration. Surely you understand?" Her tone was pleasant but firm. "You're being paid very well to work this trip." Actually, I'd noticed that my last paycheck, received just before leaving London, was short several £100s, but I didn't mention it. Instead, I smiled. "Of course, Mrs. Bennett, I understand perfectly." That afternoon, while the family was out, I made my move. I pulled up the reservation confirmation for Le Jules Verne. in my name, held with my credit card as the primary guarantee. I sent a carefully worded email explaining that our party would no longer be requiring the reservation and requesting cancellation. Then I called to confirm, speaking with the manager in my fluent French. Next came the car service I'd arranged for the evening, cancelled. The premium champagne that was to be waiting at their table, cancelled. The special birthday cake from La Durée that I'd ordered, cancelled. The private photographer I'd hired to capture the evening, cancelled. But I didn't stop there. The remaining activities I'd scheduled for the week, the private tour of Versailles, the cooking class, the tickets to the ballet, I cancelled everything that was in my name or held with my company credit card. Every reservation that was dependent on my credentials or connections, gone. I documented each cancellation with screenshots and confirmation emails. Then I drafted an email of my own, a professional, clear resignation letter outlining the contractual violations I'd documented, the pattern of wage theft and overwork, and my immediate termination of employment. I attached a summary of all violations, making it clear I had extensive documentation should they choose to contest anything or provide poor references, but I didn't send it yet. That would come later. First, I wanted them to understand what I'd actually been doing for them all this time, how much invisible labor had kept their privileged life running smoothly. At 6 o'clock, I had Olivia and James bathed and dressed in the outfits Victoria had laid out. They looked adorable. Olivia wore a navy dress with soft tagless seams I'd specially ordered for her. James had his favorite soft cotton shirt that didn't bother his skin. I'd done their hair, packed their sensory toys for comfort, prepared everything exactly as I always did. The Bennetts returned to their suite to change for dinner, the adults laughing and already tipsy from afternoon cocktails. Victoria looked stunning in a gold designer dress. Marcus was in a bespoke suit. Their guests were equally elegant. "Sarah, the children look wonderful," Victoria said, barely glancing at Olivia and James before turning to her mirror to apply more lipstick. "We should be back by 11, midnight at the latest. There's a bottle for James if he won't settle, and Olivia's anxiety medication is in the bathroom if she needs it." I nodded silently. 20 minutes later, I watched from a window as the group of elegantly dressed adults climbed into the fleet of cars that weren't there, the cars I'd canceled. Confusion erupted on the sidewalk below. Phone calls were made. The hotel concierge was consulted. Eventually, the concierge arranged alternative transportation, though it took 30 minutes and lacked the luxury of what I'd originally booked. I could see Victoria's tight, angry expression even from 7 floors up. They departed an hour late. I gave them 20 minutes to arrive at Le Jules Verne. Then I sent my resignation email to Victoria, to Marcus, CC'd to their personal assistant, their family attorney, and my agency. Professional, unemotional, and devastating in its detailed documentation. Another 10 minutes, and my phone began ringing. Victoria. I didn't answer. Marcus. Ignored. Their assistant. No, I did. However, answer when Olivia called out from the next room. "Sarah, can we have dinner now?" "Of course, darlings. Let's see what we can order." My phone continued buzzing with increasingly frantic messages, but I focused on the children. We ordered pasta and dessert, watched their favorite movie, and I got them ready for bed. Throughout, I was calm, present, completely focused on their care. This wasn't their fault, and I would never punish them for their parents' behavior. The messages told their own story. First, confusion. "Sarah, there's some mistake with the reservation." Then anger. "What have you done? Fix this immediately." Then panic. "They're saying the reservation was canceled." "Where are you? The cars never showed up." "What is happening?" Finally, around 9:30, a call from Marcus that I did answer. "Sarah, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but you need to fix this situation immediately. We're standing outside a restaurant with no reservation, and Victoria is humiliated in front of our guests." "I'm not playing any game, Mr. Bennett," I said calmly. "I simply canceled arrangements that were made in my name and with my credentials. You'll find my resignation in your email. I've documented 3 years of contract violations, wage theft, and mistreatment. My attorney has copies of everything. You can't just quit. We're in Paris. You're responsible for the children." "I am responsible for the children, which is why I'm currently giving them the attentive care they deserve while you're out trying to have dinner without me. The children are safe, fed, and will be asleep within the hour. My notice period begins when we return to London. Until then, my contracted hours are 9 to 6. It's currently 9:35 p.m. I'm off duty. The silence on the other end was profound. Then, "You've ruined my wife's birthday. You'll never work in childcare again." "I'll make sure of it. Mr. Bennett, I have documented proof of every violation of my employment contract. I have records of late payments, unpaid overtime, and a draft reference letter you prepared that amounts to defamation. If you attempt to interfere with my career, I'll have no choice but to share all of this documentation with the appropriate authorities, including HMRC regarding possible tax irregularities in how you've classified my pay." I could hear Victoria's voice in the background, shrill with anger. Marcus said something to her I couldn't quite hear, then returned to the phone. "How much do you want?" "Excuse me?" "To fix this, to delete whatever you think you have. Name your price." And there it was, the Bennett way. Everything could be bought. Every problem solved with money. They were increasingly desperate to hide they didn't actually have. I don't want your money, Mr. Bennett. I want my final paycheck, including all owed overtime calculated at the legally required rate, delivered within 7 days. I want a neutral reference letter stating only my dates of employment and job title. And I want to be left alone after I fulfill my notice period. That's all? This is unconscionable. We've treated you like family. No, I said quietly. You've used like family as an excuse to exploit my labor and cross my boundaries. Family would have paid me on time. Family would have respected my contracted hours. Family would have invited me to the birthday dinner, instead of relegating me to a staff room to eat alone with the children I've raised for 3 years. You've treated me exactly like what you always saw me as. Staff, which is fine, but then you need to abide by employment law. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, but I felt strangely liberated. Olivia called out for water, and I went to her, putting all thoughts of the Bennetts aside to focus on her needs. They returned to the hotel around midnight, having cobbled together a mediocre replacement dinner at a bistro with availability. I heard them in the suite's living room through the connecting door to the children's room. Victoria's voice was tight with suppressed fury. That ungrateful little bitch. After everything we've done for her, we need to be strategic, Marcus countered. If she has documentation like she says, and if she really does consult an attorney, this could get messy. The last thing we need right now is an employment tribunal asking questions about our finances. So what? We just let her get away with this? We pay her what we owe, we let her work out her notice, and we prepare our own documentation of her shortcomings. Two can play the evidence game. I almost smiled. Let them try. Every text message, every email, every late payment was backed up in 3 separate locations. I'd been meticulous. The next morning, I rose at my usual time, dressed professionally, and presented myself at the suite at exactly 9 a.m. Victoria's face when she opened the door was a mask of cold fury. The children are still sleeping. We had a difficult evening thanks to you. I'm sorry to hear that, I said evenly. I'm here for my contracted 9 to 6 shift. Shall I wake them for breakfast or let them sleep? The week that followed was glacial. Victoria and Marcus spoke to me only when absolutely necessary, their words clipped and cold, but they couldn't actually do without me. James had a meltdown at the Louvre when Marcus tried to deviate from the routine I'd established. Olivia refused to sleep without the specific bedtime routine I'd created for her. The Bennetts needed me desperately, and they hated me for it. Their extended family and friends, witnessing the obvious tension, asked questions. I remained professionally pleasant and said nothing, but I noticed the looks exchanged, the whispered conversations. Victoria's birthday celebration had been disastrous, and people had noticed. On our last day in Paris, Catherine, the French nanny I'd befriended, approached me in the Jardin du Luxembourg. I heard what you did, she said quietly. The other nannies are talking about it. You're brave. I wish I had the courage. You have more power than you think, I told her. Document everything. Know your worth. They need us far more than we need them. The flight back to London was silent. The Bennetts sat in first class while I managed the exhausted, confused children in business. Olivia cried because she didn't understand why everyone was upset. James was dysregulated from the disrupted routines. I soothed them, entertained them, held them. I would miss these children so much. We landed at Heathrow on a gray morning. The Bennetts' driver collected them while I took a taxi back to my own flat, not the townhouse. My belongings had been packed before we left for Paris, anticipating this moment. I was done living in their home, being available at all hours, pretending I didn't notice how I was being used. The notice period was specified in my contract as 2 weeks. I worked every one of those days, 9 to 6, at the Bennett home. I prepared transition documents for the next nanny, detailing Olivia and James's needs, their routines, their triggers and comfort strategies. I wanted whoever came next to be able to help these children I loved. Victoria watched me work with barely concealed disdain. Marcus avoided me entirely, but the children clung to me, sensing something was wrong. How do you explain to a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old that the person who's been their primary caregiver for 3 years is leaving? On my final day, I said goodbye to Olivia and James in their playroom. Olivia cried. James, who struggled with emotional expression, simply held my hand tightly and wouldn't let go. Why can't you stay? Olivia asked through tears. Don't you love us anymore? I love you both so much, I told them, my own eyes burning with unshed tears. But sometimes grown-ups have to make hard choices. Your parents will find someone wonderful to take care of you, but we want you, James whispered. Victoria appeared in the doorway. That's enough, Sarah. The children need to have lunch. I kissed each child on the forehead, gathered my final belongings, and walked out of the Bennett home for the last time. On the front steps, I paused and looked back at the elegant townhouse where I'd spent 3 years of my life. So many memories. First steps, first words, comforting nightmares, celebrating tiny victories. I'd given these people everything, and they'd treated me as disposable. My phone buzzed. A bank notification. My final paycheck had arrived. I checked the amount. Every penny of overtime, calculated precisely, was included. Along with it, an email from the Bennett's attorney containing a reference letter that was coldly neutral, but not actively damaging. They'd decided compliance was safer than confrontation. Smart choice. 3 weeks later, I received a message from Emma, the agency recruiter who'd originally placed me with the Bennetts. "Sarah, I need to tell you something. Victoria Bennett called asking if we could recommend someone for Olivia and James. I asked what happened with you, and she gave a very different story than what you documented. I wanted you to know that I've made note of her version, and we're declining to work with the family again. Your reputation in our agency is sterling, and we believe you." Another month after that, I was hired by a lovely family in Notting Hill. 2 children, both neurotypical, parents who respected boundaries, fair pay, and reasonable hours. They'd checked my references, including a glowing one from my previous employer before the Bennetts, an ambassador's family who still sent me Christmas cards. The best part? They treated me like a skilled professional, not like family when it suited them and staff when it didn't. Just professional respect, clear boundaries, and appreciation for my work. It was everything the Bennett position should have been. I occasionally saw updates about the Bennetts on social media. Victoria still posted carefully curated images of their perfect life, though I noticed Olivia looked anxious in recent photos, and James had regressed to some of the behaviors I'd worked so hard to help him overcome. They'd hired someone new, but the position listing appeared again 3 months later, and then again 2 months after that. Olivia found me on social media about 6 months after I'd left. She sent a message through her mother's account. "Sarah, it's Olivia. I miss you. Can you come back? The new nanny doesn't know how to help when I feel scared." My heart broke reading it. I responded carefully. "Sweet Olivia, I miss you too. I can't come back, but I want you to know that the scared feelings are temporary and you're so strong. Ask your mummy to find a nanny who understands anxiety like I did. You deserve someone patient and kind. I'm always cheering for you." Victoria must have seen the message because I was blocked immediately afterward. I hoped Olivia knew I meant every word. A year after the Paris incident, my former agency contacted me with an interesting opportunity. A high-profile family was looking for a Norland nanny to accompany them on an extended European trip, including a week in Paris. The pay was exceptional. The family had excellent references from previous staff, and they were clear about expectations, boundaries, and compensation. I took the job, and when we stayed at the Plaza Athénée, I requested, and was given, a guest room on the same floor as the family because my employers understood that caring for children at night was part of the job. When we dined at Michelin-starred restaurants, they made reservations for an additional seat because they valued my presence and conversation. On the evening we had dinner at Le Jules Verne, I looked out at the glittering lights of Paris from the Eiffel Tower and felt a profound sense of peace. The family I worked for introduced me to the waiter as Sarah, who keeps our whole family running smoothly. Not their nanny, not their employee, but a person whose contribution they genuinely appreciated. This was what I'd deserved all along. Not to be treated as family, that false intimacy the Bennetts had used to exploit me, but to be treated as a skilled professional whose work had value and whose boundaries deserved respect. As dessert was served, my phone buzzed with an email. It was from Catherine, the French nanny I'd met in Paris. "You inspired me," she wrote. "I documented everything like you said. Today I resigned from my position and got a job with a family who treats me like a human being. Thank you for showing me I deserved better." I smiled and raised my glass in a silent toast to knowing your worth, to refusing to be made invisible, to the revenge that comes not from hurting others, but from building a life where you're genuinely valued. The Bennetts had tried to humiliate me by excluding me from their celebration. Instead, they'd freed me to find situations where I was genuinely included. They'd thought I was powerless staff they could discard. They'd discovered I held more power than they'd ever imagined, the power to walk away. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't destroying those who've wronged you. It's building a life so much better than what they offered that their rejection becomes the best gift they could have given you. The missing chair at that Paris dinner was supposed to be my moment of defeat. Instead, it was the moment I finally stood up from a table where I'd never truly belonged, and walked toward one where I was welcomed. And that, more than any vindictive act, was worth celebrating. If this story resonated with you, or if you've ever felt invisible in your own life, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below sharing your experience. Have you ever had to walk away from a situation where you weren't valued? What gave you the courage? And don't forget to subscribe to Nanny's Truth for more real stories about finding your power and demanding the respect you deserve. Hit that notification bell so you never miss when we post. Your worth isn't determined by how others treat you. It's determined by how you choose to treat yourself. See you in the next story.